our wonderful runner, Ouro. Take it away.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ouro. With me, I have AltaBiscuit back here. He doesn't know a dang thing about this game, so he's going to ask a lot of stupid questions and maybe talk about ovens a little bit. So yeah, without further ado, we'll go ahead and just get started here. Oh, sorry. 3, 2, 1, go. A little too excited.
Going too fast already.
All right, so Monster Sanctuary is a combination Metroidvania and roguelike. So we're getting our starter Pokemon equivalent choice here. We're going to go ahead and pick the Eagle for some reasons that we'll get into later. Right away here we have our tutorial fight. So we're just going to beat up this little blob guy. He's so cute, but we're just going to zap him in the face. So the way that we get monsters in this game is they're dropped as eggs. So we defeated the blob, so we get its egg, and we hatch it into a little blob friend. We're going to turn down the difficulty really quick here. And we're just going to see a little bit of why we chose Eagle to start. So the 4 different monsters that you can start with all have different overworld exploration abilities. Eagle happens to have this glide ability that only it has, and the other monster that you can get early that has it, we're not going to want to get. So it lets us kind of skip some things and do a little bit cleaner movement than we would otherwise be able to do. So we're going to take a couple encounters here. We want to get the egg of this magma pillar enemy that we just took out here. For the sake of the marathon, I am using a mod that guarantees the egg drops. Otherwise, this game has a rather annoying loot table system for acquiring the eggs. It kind of has a similar ranking system in the battles to Forbidden Memories, where you kind of start with a high score, and then based on the number of actions you take and various things, you'll lose points or gain points back, and you'll get final scores at the end of every battle. You'll get stars 1 through 5, and based on how many stars you get, basically for each one you have a 20% chance for the monster to drop its rare drop slot, and the eggs fall into those egg drop slots. So you basically have that pretty low chance to get a rare drop in the first place, and then you also have to roll the egg dropping as well. So a lot of runs in this game die really, really early, because there's a lot of monsters we need to drop for either their exploration abilities, using them in combat, or both. But yeah, we won't have to deal with that today.
Don't have to do any A-teching.
Thankfully, yeah. No Megamorphs today.
So the fire starters keep winning.
Yes. So Magma Pillar is just a generally useful monster. It's pretty good defensively. It's going to end up being like a pretty good support for us for a good chunk of the early game. So yeah, we're going to get it from these encounters. Also keeping in mind our experience as we go through these encounters, we want to hit certain thresholds at certain times. Every monster in this game has a skill tree that unlocks a new tier every 10 levels. So hitting those 10 level thresholds at very certain times is going to be really important for us moving forward. So we're going to teach a couple skills here. We're teaching a new ability to Blob, which is Slime Shot. That allows us to exploit the weakness of Cat Zerker here, as well as just being a really strong poison debuff. Thankfully, the Blob did not heal Cat Zerker there. So Cat Zerker is another monster we want to drop. It has an ability that allows it to break walls, and it's also really, really good in combat, especially early on. So we're going to be using that for a good chunk of the run as well.
Imagine this game's got its own type chart and stuff going as well.
So actually, interestingly in that regard, every monster doesn't have like its own type. There are attack types, so there's wind, earth, water, fire, and neutral. And then magic and physical also kind of count as their own. But every monster has its unique weakness by species. So they don't have, you know, your traditional Pokemon types. You just kind of have to know their weaknesses monster by monster, which kind of makes your monster selection a little bit more interesting. We don't super care about our own monsters' weaknesses, even though there are some things that will just absolutely decimate us based on the monsters we're using, but it's kind of a secondary thing.
Oh, to be a blob farmer.
So this is Old Burin. I forget what his like actual story deal is, but he's basically just the tutorial guy. So we're gonna get a quick sort of tutorial on keeper battles, and it's not going to matter too much right now since we only have 2 monsters, but generally in keeper battles, battles against other people, they're all 3v3. So, and we're always going to go first. And that same system is what is used for this game's like online PvP. So the player that goes first has a deficit of only being able to use 2 actions on the first turn instead of 3. So we're going to factor that into a lot of the openers of our fights. But yeah, we only have 2 monsters right now, so he'll only use 2 monsters against us, which is really nice. So we're going to go ahead and hatch our first monsters here because we're about to fight our first champion monster, which are sort of the bosses of this game, in addition to the keeper battles. So we're going to teach some more skills here, and then we're going to jump right in. So the champion monsters are mostly 1v3. There are a couple that have like additional monsters that help them out. But this one is just us against the monster. The champion monsters get extra actions against us to kind of balance out the fact that they're all alone. But we're just kind of wail on it here. We have Poison from Blob, we have Burn from Magma Pillar, and then Lightning Bolt from Eagle is what it's weak to, so it'll do a decent amount of damage for us. So you'll notice in the top right-hand corner we have a combo and a damage multiplier. What that means is, so every hit that we do of an attack or a supportive ability, we'll rack up that combo, and then we'll do more damage on every subsequent hit in that turn. So we're kind of using our highest damage monster at the end of any given turn. So we're going to go ahead and teach some more skills here.
So that must incentivize you to use multi-hit attacks initially before your strong attacks.
Exactly, yeah. So you'll generally put your support first, and then your hardest hitter is going to be the back. And in this case, that's Eagle for us. And it's just kind of nice to keep your party tidy and not have to switch around monsters manually, so you just kind of keep them menued in the order that you want to use them. We will occasionally break that ordering based on monster weaknesses and kind of when we need to hit certain things. But so now we're going to be heading back to kind of the central hub of the game, which is the Keeper's Stronghold. Just kind of a vague idea of what the story of this game is. So we are in the Monster Sanctuary currently. And as its name implies, it is a sanctuary for monsters outside of the real world. It's kind of like a weird Metroidvania Wakanda. It's just like hidden in the world, and it's, you know, sheltered off from the rest of the world because the world has lost its magic and monsters have been kind of removed from the rest of the world. So this is kind of their safe haven, so to speak, even though we're in here beating them all up, but that's okay.
Minor details.
Yeah, it's fine. This game has a plot that kind of largely doesn't make sense, and I've kind of forgotten a lot of it, so you're going to get the Spark Notes half-forgotten version of it throughout the run.
We'll just fill in the blanks with our own story.
Yeah, exactly. Choose your own adventure book. So we're going to tag the fast travel point and Keeper Stronghold here. We're going to be going back here quite a lot, so we just want to make sure that that's available to us. Then we're going to be heading into the next area of the game, which is Blue Caves. So our main goal right now is to defeat champion monsters, increase our champion rank, or our keeper rank, and that's going to allow us to access the right half of the map, basically. So we're kind of going on a world tour here, defeating a lot of the early champion monsters, and eventually working towards unlocking that right side of the map. There's also some story triggers we need to hit just for our... we have sort of a group of friends that will kind of follow us around as we go. They're basically the people that got the other spectral monsters that I could have started the game with. And they'll be kind of an important plot point. The spectral familiars are also kind of our plot exposition. We as a character are a silent protagonist, and our spectral eagle in this case will kind of be our mouth and our ears that will give us exposition for the story, talk to people for us, and all that kind of good stuff.
All the stuff that we forgot about.
Yes. We skip it all, so it's fine. So using Cat Zerker's exploration ability to break a wall there, grabbing some items. Most of what we're going to be grabbing is crafting materials, equipment, and keys. The way that the equipment works in this game is all of the equipment, monsters have a 1 weapon slot and 3 accessory slots with some exceptions. We'll get into those a little bit later. But all of those equipment can be upgraded to +5. Ideally, a lot of the equipment that we find comes pre-upgraded, so we're going to get a lot of pre-upgraded equipment from some kind of later game areas, and just kind of let that do the work for us. There are sort of legendary equipment pieces that we're going to be getting as well, that all of them start unupgraded. So most of the crafting materials that we're going to be gathering are for upgrading those. And those are generally way more powerful than the normal equipment. They either have kind of unique passives to them or are generally just really good stat sticks.
Getting Pokemon XD Coliseum vibes from the battle system, except battles are done in the time it takes to do one attack in those games.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, the woes of not being able to turn off animations in those games. I think like half of the length of those speedruns is just animations. Which is a shame, because they're really good runs. So, some of the encounters I'm doing here, again, for experience, but also, we're going to be wanting a monster called Frosty near the end of this area. And the encounters I'm taking are... We have a lot of options as far as encounters we can take that make the experience route work. But the one I'm taking kind of compounds the way the egg drop system works that I was talking about earlier. So by fighting encounters that have Tengu, which is the little like red mask guy we fought earlier, if we can get him to drop, it will increase the chance of Frosty dropping on a later encounter. And then also these encounters with these monks will also increase our chances if we get one to drop. Again, we're using the mod for the sake of the marathon, but just kind of showcasing what we would normally do in a run. To that end, the way that the egg drops work as well is if there are multiple different monsters in an encounter, if you already have an egg for one of them, it kind of skews the drop ratio towards the one that you don't have. Unfortunately, the game still kind of screws you over, and the odds of getting Frosty in particular are absurdly low. And unfortunately, the way the encounters work in this game, so basically they're on a loop of like 5. So every 5 encounters you do will refresh the first one of that loop, so to speak. So we can't really farm for specific things and just eat the time loss. We have to get it in those, in this case 2 tries for Frosty, or it's run over. So yeah, definitely having that extra safety for marathons is really nice. These fights are a little bit outscaling us already, so we're not going to get super great star ratings on a lot of these. We're basically going to cap out at like 3 stars on most of them. Which ends up being a 60% chance for the rare drop, and then basically a 50-50 for the egg, and then again skewed for, based on which monsters we do and don't have eggs for. So in that case, when we don't have any of the monsters in the encounter, it's, full odds between all 3 of them. So it gets really nasty to get the drops that you want. So teaching a quick skill to Cat Zerker here. Normally this would allow us to get another weakness exploit on the first couple turns, which the game does care about for the ranking system.
Looks like it's auto-healing you after every fight.
Yes, so that is actually a really nice thing about this game, is it does full heal you at the end of every fight. You go into every fight fully refreshed, everything is balanced around you going in at full strength, which is really, really nice to not have to manage that in a speedrun. Definitely super appreciate that about this game. One more encounter, and then we're going to get one of our main Metroidvania upgrades that doesn't come from a monster, and it's the Metroidvania genre staple of double jump that drastically opens up the game. Surprise, surprise. Shoutouts to every Metroidvania rando where double jump gates like half the game. As soon as you get it, the whole thing lights up.
The archipelago experience.
Yes.
Also known as the game can finally start.
Yeah. We're out of Sphere Zero. Alright. Grabbing our double jump here so we can actually get out of there. And then we're going to proceed on to our next champion monster. So we can kind of use Eagle here to get a little bit of extra height on our jumps and just barely get up on some lips that we otherwise wouldn't be able to, which is really nice.
Does that let you skip anything, potentially?
Kind of small things. It's not necessarily like huge sequence break skips or anything, but it does kind of let you cut a lot of corners in a lot of areas, which is definitely appreciated.
Frosty is a friend.
Frosty is a friend. He kind of reminds me of the plasma enemies in various Kirby games. I never gave him orb, that's fine. Doesn't matter that much. I've like rerouted this game a ton recently, so a lot of this is definitely still pretty fresh in my head as far as routing is concerned. So we're going to teach some more skills here. Thankfully, as long as you don't close the menu, you actually are able to like kind of go back in and reteach skills if you change your mind or anything, which is really neat, especially for misclicks.
You do have some good notes though to keep you company with this, which
Yeah.
you know, pretty. If you've ran any RPGs for any amount of time, like you're gonna have notes for things. Games can be very long, and the menus especially can be tough to remember sometimes.
A lot of the execution in this run comes down to just menus and optimizing the menus. The movement's generally something to pay attention to, but it's not super crazy difficult. There isn't a lot of super difficult movement tech, especially once we get a monster in the next area of the game. It's going to streamline movement a lot. So Frosty is going to be our introduction to a debuff called Chill. So the way that Chill works is if you see the purple bar below all of the monster's health bars, that is their mana bar. So every skill that you use costs mana, and every monster has a mana regeneration value. So you're kind of balanced around using super strong attacks based on your mana usage. And what Chill does is it reduces the amount of mana regen that the target has. And Frosty is able to stack Chill multiple times. And whenever a monster applies multiple stacks of a debuff, every additional stack is half effectiveness. So we're basically getting 2 full stacks worth of Chill whenever we have all 3 stacks applied. Another nice little thing we can do with Glide here is sort of jump and then glide and then jump out of that, and that gives us a little bit cleaner movement in a lot of areas and a lot more control over our aerial movement. Fortunately, the monster abilities are on the same button as opening chests, so if you get a little too excited, you will just kind of fly around. Yeah, so this is another monster we'll want the egg for. This is Yowie. He allows you to break walls like Cat Zerker does, but he also allows you to push blocks, which will come into play in a couple areas later on. They do have an annoying buff that they give themselves that makes them heal themselves at the end of every turn. So it can be annoying if you just get bad damage ranges or bad crits. They can take some extra turns to take down.
So when you're doing, when you were doing your first playthrough of this game, how do you know about these abilities? You just catch things and then find out yourself? Or
Yeah, so if you go into this menu that lets you switch monsters, it does say at the bottom like what their exploration ability is, and it kind of just explains it for you, which is really nice. There is a lot of overlap on the abilities, so it isn't like, oh, I missed this monster, so I can't play the game. Like, for instance, Frosty has the exact same flight pass or flight active that Spectral Eagle does, and there's a lot of like basic level flying enemies in the game. Magma Pillar, for instance, lets you interact with fire orbs because he breathes fire. There's a lot of monsters that do that, and there's kind of different forms of that. So I'm trying to think of the exact total of actual exploration abilities. There's about 107, I want to say, different monsters in the game, and there's probably like a fifth of that as far as exploration abilities that are available. So it's really hard to kind of screw yourself out of progression, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's good.
This game also does have DLC that was really well integrated into the base game. So I played this game pretty late into it being out. It came out in 2019, and I didn't play it until like maybe 2022. And the DLC is just kind of an extra area that's like, you don't pay for the DLC, it's just like a free update, and it just adds an extra area to the game. So you can kind of just like find that area and be like, hey, this is a cool area, and then just have no idea it was DLC. So it's really, really cool. Hugely recommend this game in general. It's a really good casual playthrough. The skill tree system adds a lot of customization of how you build your team. You kind of want to think about your party of 6 as like 2 teams of 3. So you can kind of build like different synergistic team compositions, and we're definitely going to be doing that quite a lot once we're at the later game and we actually have a little bit more control over what we're using. But for now, we're kind of just like using good monster soup, so to speak. So kind of running around here, hitting some switches to allow us to progress. We're fighting a lot of encounters here because we have a lot of fire damage, and generally everything here is weak to fire, as you might imagine from being a snow area. So we want to hit level 10, which is very, very important for getting our next row of skills in the skill tree. There's also a lot of monsters we want to drop here. There's Mogwai, which is this guy. There is Ice Blob, which is, you've seen already. It's the ice version of the blob that we got early on in the game. And then there's also Ouro Tail, which is going to be kind of a mount sort of monster that gives us a lot faster movement speed. And we're going to be hatching our Ice Blob egg at a very particular time. So the way that the egg's hatching works is the monster that you hatch, the level it is relative to the highest level monster in your party. So we're going to hatch it at a time that we've like just freshly leveled, and we're going to be at high a level as possible. That window between your highest level monster and the egg that hatches widens as you get higher levels. Like at the start of the game, they'll be the same level as your highest level. At this point of the game, they'll be a level below your highest, and then later on in the game, they'll be 2 levels lower. There is a rare candy-esque item in this game called level badges, but they have a stipulation that they can only be used on monsters that are at least 2 levels lower than your highest. So we're going to be using those to circumvent that 2-level deficit and make it a 1-level deficit instead on everything we hatch after a certain point.
I saw in a previous fight that one of your party members died, so I imagine they get revived at the end. Do they still get experience?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
So every monster that's in your main 6 will get experience at all times, which is really, really nice. So we're going to go ahead and hatch Ice Blob here. And we're just going to keep it chilling in our party, pun partially intended, for a while just to soak up experience. We're going to exactly hit level 10 on it when we exit this area. So it has a skill in the second row of its skill tree called Congeal. And what Congeal does is it turns Chill into a damage over time debuff as well. And it'll deal damage based on the missing mana of the monster that it's on. So when the debuff is reducing the amount of mana it gets back and damaging it based on its missing mana, it's really, really efficient, especially when we're also able to get extra stacks of Chill with both Frosty and Ice Blob. So with the 2 of them, we'll be able to get up to 5 stacks of Chill, which will end up being the equivalent of 3 full stacks of Chill. So that's going to be our main way to deal with a lot of enemies early on, because they're going to outlevel us pretty dang quickly, and our just like raw damage stats are just not going to be enough to cut it after not too long here.
Oh, I love the crystal snails. They're so friend-shaped.
They are. They're also really annoying because they can shield the rest of the monsters in the encounter and kind of sit in front of the way and stop you from defeating things. So you end up wanting to target them down first.
You win some and lose some with being friend-shaped.
Yeah, that's true. Look, protecting your friends just kind of seems like part of being friend-shaped.
Yes. Yeah, we should get donations from people. I mean, you know, what's your favorite friend-shaped thing that you see on the screen here? I don't know any of the names. Fill in the blank.
A lot of them are like very, very literal, which is funny. So like we've got like more like interesting names like Ouro Tail here, but like Cat Zerker is just a cat berserker with a big sword. Like it's basically just like he looks like he's inspired by Guts from Berserk. Like it looks pretty on the nose. And then like one of the basic bird monsters is just named Ouro. Like they're very straightforward names, and a lot of them, their designs kind of carry very close to real world inspirations. So we're gonna go ahead and hatch Ouro Tail here. And this is gonna be our main movement for the rest of the game. Just gonna ride around on this little guy. He's also friend-shaped. On earlier patches of the game, some of the monsters had a little bit less detailed sprites. Ouro Tail is one of them, and it looks like an absolute goober on earlier patches. It's really funny. He also has that little animation of like licking his lips, and it just adds to the goofiness. He's a silly little guy.
Should have the option to use the older sprites.
That'd be kind of cool.
I'm reminded, like, Slay the Spire has beta art that you can use.
Oh my god, yeah, that's so good. Yeah, thankfully Ouro Tail is weak to physical, so Cat Zerker can break through it pretty quick. Fortunately, it's still pretty bulky, and they are kind of out-leveling us at this point, so...
So kind of like another comparison to Pokemon is like, is there like an equivalent to evolutions, or what you see is what you get?
Yeah, so there aren't a ton. There are only a handful of evolutions in the game. But there's going to be a tree that we're going to find later on that is basically our evolution point. So every monster that can evolve has an associated item that is called a catalyst that's kind of like an evolution stone in Pokemon. So we bring that item and the monster to the tree and then use it to evolve it. We're going to do that once in the run. That's another thing that you need to drop, which thankfully we're able to circumvent with the egg drop mod. So thank God for that. But yeah, so there's basically the Eevee equivalent of this game is a little dragon guy named Drakenov, and he has 5 different evolutions, I think. They all provide the same exploration ability, but they all kind of have a different elemental affinity as well as kind of a different archetype as far as their skill tree goes. So the rest of the things that we're doing in this area, we're grabbing some rawhides because we need to get another progression item called Warm Underwear that allows us to swim in the cold water in this area, which is basically just needed to get to the next area, and that's about it. We are still doing some...
Very useful thing for Minnesota.
Yes, for sure. Okay, that is actually kind of a tricky little jump there with the glide. I've had some runs where I've gotten really way too stuck there, and it's kind of annoying. All right, so we're hatching Yowie and Mogwai here. Like I said earlier, Yowie's going to allow us to push some blocks. Mogwai is going to allow us to interact with ice orbs, and specifically ones that are farther away. He has sort of an improved version of that ice interaction. We're going to wait to use our skill points here, because we're basically not going to need them for a while, so we're just going to wait until absolutely as late as possible. We can't really get any more meaningful power boosts from them just now. Couple more items to grab, and then we'll go ahead and get the warm underwear and get out of here. Break this wall, we'll switch to Blob. We're going to interact with a water orb here. So there's orbs for all of the 4 main elements, and there's a lot of monsters that just have abilities that will just spit whatever element is at the orb and allow us to activate them as switches. There are some monsters that we aren't going to get in the speedrun, but there are some that will allow you to kind of do 2 in 1. Like there's a monster called Shockhopper that has both electric and ice in its overworld ability, which does have some switches that it's kind of intended for you to use them for. Otherwise, just kind of convenient to have multiple things on the same monster.
What are a lot of these items that you're picking up in chests?
Most of them are either crafting materials or equipment. I think like 95% of what I'm picking up is going to be that. There are some items later on, once we get into the dark and light shift mechanic, that allow us to control those dark and light shifts. So I guess to touch on that, every single monster in this game, after we clear the next area, still need to fight these guys. Every monster has a dark shifted and a light shifted version. That will not only change their base stats, but also give them an extra passive of some kind. So like, we're going to be light shifting Ice Blob later, for instance, and that's going to let it take 15% less damage from all sources, which is really, really nice. And we're going to basically be shifting our entire party by the end of the game. But we'll get into that a little bit more when we get there. Something else I didn't mention either is, so all these encounters I'm taking, there's RNG to the drops. But thankfully, which monsters are in each encounter is entirely fixed. So we can always take the same encounters every time, always, not have to worry about an encounter randomly not having the enemy whoop on or anything like that. The shifts on monsters that we find in the wild will change, as we see a little bit later, but the actual monsters themselves will always be the same. So kind of there showing off something that I haven't touched on yet either. So every encounter kind of has a fixed battle arena in the world that, like, when you touch the enemy, you'll get put in that sort of arena within the world. Excellent, hitting a lot of guys here. So based on which side you hit the monster from, you'll be put on either the left or the right side of that arena. Every encounter that we can take, or that we want to take, we'll try to take it from the side that puts us on the side of the encounter that pushes us towards the direction we're moving. And we can also use that to kind of push enemies out of the way. So if you run away from an encounter, the enemies will stay where they were. So if we take an encounter, from the side that pushes them away from where we're trying to go, we can kind of manipulate them to not be in the way, which is useful in quite a lot of sections. There are a lot of really tight corridors that enemies will just clog up.
Are you guaranteed to be able to flee from encounters?
Yes, so they're attached to an item called smoke bombs, which we do have a limited amount, at least early. So I do have to be kind of careful about which encounters I'm taking, because if I take too many that I have to run away from, I do have to start fighting them, and that does lose a lot of time. But generally that doesn't happen, so we'll cross our fingers and hope that doesn't happen. So basically the whole gist of this area, this is the Sun Palace, the whole gist of this area is hitting a bunch of switches to raise a platform in the main room of the area, and then each tier of that platform we raise is going to have another switch on it that will allow us to lower the water level in the lower part, which allows us to hit the next switch, and so on and so forth. A lot of hitting switches back and forth. This game really does love a lot of back and forth switch hitting, as we'll see, especially with a lot of rooms later on. It's kind of a neat touch with the sprite work in this area. You can kind of see where the water was. There's like this blue kind of ruined coloration on where the water used to be. It gives it a really cool vibe.
Yeah, that's a nice touch.
So we do have significantly hampered movement underwater, but in the next room here, or sorry, 2 rooms away, we're going to be entering a room that you're not intended to go into until you've lowered the water an additional time. But we can do some very precise movement and get here without doing that. Okay, we got it. That is pretty consistent when you get the movement down, but it is really, really tight. So yeah, we're coming in here for some more really upgraded equipment. A lot of the equipment we can get here is upgraded to +4 already, and the max for equipment upgrades is +5, so they're basically maxed out already, and that's going to be great for us. We're also going to pick up a crystal shard, which is basically our homeward bone equivalent if you're familiar with Dark Souls. It just takes us back to the Keeper's Stronghold fast travel point, and then from there we can fast travel to any fast travel points that we've tagged previously. So that's going to be our main way of getting around, since otherwise you have to fast travel from fast travel point to fast travel point. You can't just go anywhere from the menu anytime you want. And we can't buy them or really acquire them too easily until much later in the game, so they are at a really big premium at the early stages. So we're coming up on our next champion monster, which is Keelan. We're going to be kind of showcasing the Congeal strat for the first time after we get done with the switch puzzle here. Again, hitting switches so that we can hit more switches that allow us to hit the switch that allows us to go through the door, beat the champion monster, and then hit more switches.
Monster Switchuary? I got nothing.
This game is available on the Nintendo Switch, so it's fitting. Alright, so we're going to do a pretty big menu here. We're going to swap in Ice Blob. We're going to equip some stuff. So these yellow equipment that I'm putting on are sort of the legendary equipment that I touched on earlier. They're generally going to be better than other equipment that we can get. And those are going to be the main target for our upgrade materials. Teach some skills here. We're going to give Magma Pillar access to some shielding, which is going to be really, really important for a lot of these fights that are kind of way stronger than us now, and we can survive a lot more easily with him.
I'm not sure if this is being picked up on stream or not, but Ouro is doing a lot of the menus with the mouse. That's there, and most of the other things are done with controllers, so you can swap around for whatever is more convenient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there was actually a point where I used mouse for a lot more things, but I kind of gradually worked in more optimizations for playing it on controller and having to take my hands off the controller less. So now that Magma Pillar has applied burn, we don't really need him for anything else but to be a shield bot. And again, we're just kind of watching Congeal rip this thing apart. Every single one of those big ticks you see is Congeal doing damage for each stack. So yeah, just absolutely obliterating this thing. And as you can see, our normal damage just doesn't do anything to it, basically. So we basically need Congeal to really get through like any of the early game. and it's going to scale really well into late game as well. There's really only like one champion monster that basically doesn't get affected by it that much, but it actually has... So monsters can, in addition to having type and or type weaknesses and resistances, they can also have resistances and weaknesses to debuffs. So there are going to be monsters later that resist chill and congeal simultaneously, which is going to hamper us quite a bit. We're actually going to put that Shuriken on Cat Zerker. That's not something that always drops, but it can drop from Mogwai, and it's pretty nice. Cat Zerker at this point is kind of just a backup. We have our kind of primary congeal team built currently, but if any of those members die, we kind of need Cat Zerker and Eagle to clean things up.
I think this is a good time to hand off to our host for some words.
Yes, definitely.
Alrighty, we have a anonymous donation, $27.98 with no comment. And just a reminder that you're watching Midwest Speedfest 2025, a charity speedrun marathon live from VGM Con Dimensional Rift near Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're live all 3 days of this convention, showcasing amazing speedruns and raising funds for P-Fund Foundation. To donate, go to donate.midwestspeedfest.com or type !donate in chat and follow the link.
Awesome, thank you so much. So we're going to be coming up on the first proper Keeper battle fight here. So we're going to get introduced more or less to the evil faction of the game, which is the Alchemists. They're... Again, I don't remember a lot of the story in this game, truth be told. They're bad. They're trying to do stuff. They're trying to kidnap the spectral monsters from everybody because they're basically the key to unlocking the Monster Sanctuary to the rest of the world and doing a bunch of evil things with that. So we're going to get our first proper 6v6 fight here. Basically, all of these fights are going to operate on sort of a priority system as far as who we need to focus down. Again, seeing there that we only get 2 of our 3 actions since we're always going first. So the enemy always gets to cheat, which is a little bit unfortunate. So a lot of our turns here are going to just be trying to stay alive while Frosty applies chill to as many things as possible. Because these monsters are going to deal quite a lot of damage to us. Thankfully, Ice Blob's shielding skill removes 2 debuffs as well, so that's going to help us stay alive quite a bit as well. One nice thing, too, is once we have a decent amount of chill stacks built up on a monster, we can kind of ignore it, because a lot of our normal damage is pretty irrelevant. So we can just kind of spread chill stacks around and largely ignore things as they die slowly. It's a pretty good opener here.
This team is a bop.
It's really good, yeah. This game has some real solid bangers. Alright, so we're focusing down Crystal Steel here next because it still can use abilities that shield as well as taking hits for its allies, so we want to avoid that if at all possible. We're going to go ahead and shield here, and then we'll potion up the Magma Pillar, taking quite a lot of damage here. Something that's kind of nice about Frosty 2 is one of its skills that I taught it gives it a chance to do extra hits whenever it applies chill. So it can kind of just like machine gun through applying chill stacks if you get really, really lucky on the application. All these times you see only 1 chill stack get applied is really bad luck. And ideally, Frosty is applying like 2 to 3 stacks per skill. So yeah, now Kame on the right is going to get taken out by the chill, so we're going to start focusing on Koi. Generally, we're going to save sort of monsters that just kind of sit there and debuff us for last. So like this little Grummy on the far left is going to end up getting ignored for most of the fight because he just isn't really too much of a threat to us. Unfortunately, that does mean a lot of these Keeper fights end up being pretty slow towards the end of the fight, just because we're kind of dealing with a thing that's pretty bulky otherwise. But it's generally worth it just for the sake of dealing with everything else quickly. And again, not dying is kind of at the forefront of our mind with a lot of these fights.
Dodge hits too.
Yeah, so there's evasion, there's a lot of different buffs that can be applied that make us hitting things really annoying. Alright, so now that the major story trigger is done here, monsters can start showing up either dark or light shifted in the wild. So that Koi that he had was dark shifted. And I don't actually remember what dark shifted Koi does, but it's nothing that we care about too much, so. So we gotta do some story triggers back here. We gotta talk to our good friend Will. He is the resident nerd of the group, and he's going to be a lot of our progression as far as learning about the world and interacting with certain things that we are just too stupid to figure out ourselves, apparently. So we get kind of another sort of introduction to keeper battles here. This is a room where you can kind of do like endless keeper battles, and it's kind of like the challenge mode of the game, so to speak. But we're forced to fight Will there, and we don't have to win, so we're just gonna throw up our white flag and leave. So we're now a high enough keeper rank. We're keeper novice, which doesn't sound very high, but we're climbing up the ranks slowly but surely. And now we can access the right side of the map, which contains a lot more areas for us to explore.
Trying to climb out of bronze.
Yeah, for sure. We have 6 teammates to hold us back, but it's okay. They listen to whatever we tell them to do, so it's fine. I have to start being a little bit more careful with encounters here. I'm running a bit low on smoke bombs, unfortunately.
Are you able to get more of them if needed?
Eventually. My god. We might end up having to take some counters. It's fine. Not a big deal. Most of the encounters from this point, now that we have Congeal, are actually fightable. We really just wanted to avoid encounters at absolute caution, just before we had Congeal set up so that we, can actually take care of things, because our damage is just not good enough to fight a lot of stuff. So this is the Ancient Woods. This is another big progression gate for us. Eventually, when we progress through this area, we're going to need monsters to interact with 4 different elemental orbs. So that's kind of a big monster acquisition gate for us. We're not going to worry about doing too much here yet, because we're going to go through here, tag some fast travel points, and then proceed on to yet another area that we're going to take care of decently early on and get some really high-level equipment from it. So we got the brooch from Mom and Dad that I talked to really briefly, so we're going to sell that, and then we're going to buy the bow, which is another piece of the legendary equipment that's going to be really, really useful for us. We've also acquired a shift stone, which is going to allow us to start dark and light shifting our monsters. So we're going to dark shift Cat Zerker here for a lot of the mid-game. It's going to increase its damage quite a lot. It gets a lot of attack from that. It gets a lot of crit from the new passive that it gets, and it's going to just be kind of a machine. Mostly during the grinding section we're going to have to do in a little bit. So we're going to teach it some skills now that we reset its skill tree. We're going to actually feed some food to our guys. So this game has a food mechanic where you can give food to your guys, and it's going to give them various stat boosts. The last 3 foods that you equip to or give to something will be what is its active food. So if you want to upgrade whatever something is currently getting from food stat buffs, you have to feed it more times to kind of overwrite what's already there.
Is dark shifting your guys all upside, or is there any trade-offs?
It's basically all upside. So there is a piece of equipment we're going to be getting in not too terribly long called the Gray Pearl. It's one of a couple pieces of equipment that benefits you for having it on or it has to be on a monster that is not shifted. But other than that, shifting a monster is entirely upside. It doesn't change its weaknesses or anything. It's just straight up additional stats and extra passive abilities.
And a little more edgy.
Yes. Yeah, generally all the light shifts make it like yellowier or greener. All the dark shifts make it black or like purple or, various edgy colors. And thankfully in the speedrun we get to edgify as many as possible. So this is a huge switch puzzle that's kind of just a lot of convoluted going back and forth and pressing the same switches over and over again. This area confused me casually so long. Like, this area is so easy to just get confused in, and the game kind of baits you with a lot of switches that are unnecessary, and I forgot to hit the green one again.
My head is spinning.
Whenever you think you're done with a switch, you're probably not. And ultimately, the end goal of this maze is to hit that yellow switch, which will open up the end of this area, which will give us another piece of equipment, as well as one of 2 Ancient Woods keys that we're going to need to. I need to hit the red switch here. One of 2 Ancient Woods keys that we're going to need to progress further through this area. But again, we're not going to do that quite yet. We're going to go ahead into Magma Chamber here for a quick little detour. Grab some more stuff, make a little bit more progression monster-wise, or champion monster-wise. Okay, There's a really annoying encounter here that I want to really be careful of. Okay, they were all on the left. So that's a really tight choke point. And here we have some Mega Man spikes. Thankfully, the hitbox is pretty lenient. Because you're on Ouro Tail, it doesn't make you, like, huge or anything. It basically just follows your character hitbox. That room can be kind of tricky.
Another classic of the Metroidvania genre / Mega Man everything.
Yes. Big screen to drop through that's big, spooky, scary. That's fine. Thankfully, falling in lava and stuff has, like, no detriment to us, so we can just kind of fall in there as much as we want. I'm going to go ahead and just take this encounter instead of burning a smoke bomb on it. So we do actually need these Draconovs to drop a bit later, so we're going to go ahead and just get this encounter out of the way now. Fortunately, again, pretty slow, because we got to sit here and apply chill stacks to things.
A little firefly dragon thing, that's neat.
It is. It's one of the few monsters that evolves. That's actually the evolved form of it. It's kind of a healer support kind of monster. A lot of the monsters kind of fall into your kind of typical, like, JRPG archetypes. Like, you have supports, you have healers, you have debuffers, you have, like, raw main DPS kind of things, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of different flexible team compositions you can build in this game. It's really fun to just, like randomizers in this game are really, really fun, because you just get to mess around with a bunch of monsters that you otherwise wouldn't. This game does have a built-in randomizer mode that's actually pretty good. So we've grabbed the runestone shard down there, which is the main progression item of this area. Unfortunately, we don't know the script to read the Rosetta Stone in this area, so we can't use it ourselves. Again, we need our good buddy Will to do it for us, but we have to have seen it first to know that we need to ask him about it. So we gotta go tag it really quick, and then we're gonna go chase down Will so he can help us lower the lava in the rest of the area. So we're taking an encounter here. We want either of these two monsters, either Goblin Miner or Salahammer. So these are going to be yet another upgraded version of Cat Zerker's wall-breaking ability, and they can break through diamond blocks in addition to just broken walls in general. And there's a lot of really good equipment that's behind diamond blocks, so we're definitely going to need these guys. They can also drop steel, which is a really important crafting material later on, that we need some amount of it to drop. We don't need a ton of it to drop. We'll generally pick up most of it. But getting some amount of it dropped is nice. Some of the equipment we upgrade later is kind of just nice to have upgraded more, and it's not necessarily strictly necessary. So if we do miss out on a couple steel, it's not a huge deal. So we're going to interact with the runestone here and then walk immediately away. We don't know what to do with it. Even though we literally just got a shard that fits in the very clearly illustrated hole on the rock, but we can't figure that out. We can't figure out how to put the circle in the circle hole and things like that. Alright, so now we're going to immediately head out of Magma Chamber here and head our way back to Stronghold Dungeon. This is going to give us another Will interaction, as well as another champion monster, as well as another alchemist fight. So knocking out a lot of story triggers here. Again, just kind of taking these encounters just so I can conserve my smoke bombs for a little bit later.
Those little goblin guys.
There's a lot of different goblins in this game, so actually, slight spoilers for later on in the run, we are going to be primarily using a goblin-focused party as our second party. So we're going to keep the Congeal party as our main party, and then we're going to have the goblins as sort of backup. Goblins have kind of a unique trait in this game that all of them have a passive skill of some kind that will apply to every goblin in your party. So they can kind of stack up to ridiculous effect if you just have a party full of 3 goblins. For instance, the goblin that we're going to be using 2 of, which is Goblin Hood, little goblin archer guy. I'm going to run away from this one. I'm going to save this last smoke bomb. He is going to give extra attack to all of our goblins, and that kind of aura stacks. So if we have 2 Goblin Hoods, they're going to give, you know, that attack boost twice And they're just going to be like massive glass cannons in the later parts of the run. So this is another encounter that's kind of annoying to avoid. That one's going way up. All of the monsters that kind of have like a flying property will largely stay at a fixed height from the ground, but sometimes they'll just like float up like that and make dodging them really, really annoying. Thankfully, the pass on the way back is a lot better than on the way in. Okay, we're good.
Threading the needle.
Yeah. There's a lot of encounters that you kind of just have to go for. A lot of monsters, too, can just randomly jump. So there's a lot of times that you'll, like, make a calculated path through monsters, and then just one will just jump into you and be like, hey, what's up? So yet another switch puzzle. We love these.
You can... Your character's smart enough to handle all these switch puzzles, but not to put the triangle piece in the triangle hole.
See, this they can just trial and error. You can just sit here hitting switches until something eventually works. But I don't know, you could cause some permanent damage by putting that thing in the hole wrong. You could chip it, or like, it's like stripping a screw hole. Like, you could just, it's gonna be too loose, it's not gonna fit, and the water, or the lava's not gonna drop.
It's just
And then we
all
just can't
over.
play the game. Like, that's just the worst. Okay. These guys eventually got out of the way. Alright, so we got another champion monster coming up. This is Beetleoid. Again, we're going to be just kind of ripping it to pieces with Congeal. You can get a quick kill here if you get really, really lucky with Frosty's chill application. We'll see if we get it here. So we're going to ignite it to burn it, and then we need 3 more stacks of chill here. Okay, so this will actually kill it. It should kill it in 2 turns. That shield might actually mess it up. Yeah, it did, just barely. Tiny little bit of shield, but it just barely messed it up. That's okay. Usually this is a 3-turn fight anyway. Getting the full 5 stacks of chill there is pretty rare. So we got one more kind of sketchy encounter to get past here. This is kind of the one I wanted to save my smoke bombs for. And we got past it. They didn't jump, thank God. So this next encounter here, we can kind of just dip underwater and avoid entirely. So we got one more alchemist fight here in the Stronghold Dungeons library, and these books are basically what Will is going to need to learn how to solve our big runestone issue. So we're going to focus down Glowfly here, the one in the middle. Again, it's kind of a healer support. Going to apply a lot of buffs, and we want to get rid of it as soon as possible. Unfortunately, it dodges a lot, which kind of interrupts us, and it heals off chill stacks, which is great. Definitely seeing why we need to get rid of it as fast as possible. And this is where we really need Frosty to apply a lot of chill stacks at once, ideally. Definitely not a great opener here. Should do it. Well, now we got a ton of stacks. A lot of good attempts are basically just swearing at Frosty. It's just never comes through when you need it to. So we're going to focus down Monk here next. A lot of monsters kind of end up being inherently more vulnerable to Congeal based on how big their mana pools are. So a lot of these monsters we're going to end up dealing with just for the fact that they're going to die to fewer Congeal stacks. And every single one of the alchemists has one of these Mad Eye monsters, these little floating eyeball guys. And they are weak to magic, which is every source of our like actual damage. So Frosty's actually going to be able to do quite a bit of damage to them, thankfully. We aren't going to be entirely reliant on chill to deal with it. Decent chance, Frosty. Well, we'll heal up Frosty. Don't want to let go of him quite yet. There is kind of a certain point of the fights where you've applied enough chill and you don't really need Frosty anymore, so if it ends up dying, you can switch to Cat Zerker and kind of clean things up that way.
Speaking of.
Yeah, speak of the devil. So yeah, Cat Zerker actually does a decent amount of raw damage after we dark shifted it and retaught its skills. Ultimately a decently clean fight, you don't complain too much. A lot of the Alchemist fights, like, just winning without too much catastrophically going wrong is always appreciated. So Now I gotta talk to Will. We're gonna use a skill potion on Ice Blob. So skill potions are basically what they sound like. They basically just let you get an extra skill point on the monster you use them on. Every monster can only have one skill potion applied to it, though, so I forgot to talk to Will at the library. So now that Will has read the books in the Stronghold dungeon, now he's going to go back to the Keeper's Stronghold, read some more books, and then we're going to show him this rock and be like, hey, do you know what to do with this thing? And he's going to be like, oh my god, I read about this thing. So he runs off to Magma Chamber, and he can finally help us put the key in the hole. And now the lava's going to go down, and now we can proceed through the rest of the area.
I don't know what we would have done without him.
I know. He's so useful. We've only had to talk to him like 6 times just to figure out how to put a rock in another rock. And now is actually probably a pretty good time for some more host words, if you've got any.
I don't have any donations, but I'll give a quick update on the donation incentives for the upcoming runs. We have 2 bid wars for Time Spinner, which is going to be the next run. We have Choose the Familiar with Sprite in the lead and the Griffin not too far behind. We have the Patricide or Regicide bid war, which Patricide is winning by $25. And then after that, we have the Glitch Exhibition for Castlevania Order of Ecclesia, which is $32 towards its goal of $200.
Very, very cool. Definitely get donations in for all those incentives, guys, for sure.
Castlevania games are definitely known for various shenanigans, so
For sure.
it's worth donating for that.
This is kind of a little bit of an annoying jump that we kind of have to glide to. There we go. It's pretty easy to bonk yourself on the ceiling there, and bonking just absolutely kills all of your momentum. Alright, so we're going to take a little bit more encounters here. Again, getting eggs for Drakenov, and ideally getting the evolution stone for Drakagran, which is the monster in the middle that we want to evolve him into. So that's going to give us access to improved flying. So we've just had regular flying with Spectral Eagle and Frosty. Improved flying is exactly what it sounds like. It's improved. We actually can get significant height off of it. And that is required to get into a couple very, very important areas. So these fights do kind of take a while. We kind of just have to evenly apply chill and let them get worn down. We also need some experience here just to hit a couple skill point thresholds for the next alchemist, which is coming up here pretty soon. We kind of fight a big slew of alchemists kind of all in a row here.
Gotta get our legally distinct Charizard.
Yes, for sure. With a big rhinoceros horn on him. He is pretty cool. Like all the Drakenov evolutions are really, really cool. We're gonna see a lot of them at the end of the game. The final boss has basically all of them. I guess there is one exception. One of the evolutions gives you improved swimming. It is an Aqua Dragon. Fortunately, improved swimming is not something we'll see in the run. We only need regular swimming to get through the one major water area in the game.
Bet you'll never guess what improved swimming does.
It lets you skip currents that otherwise push you around.
You know, I was just gonna think it just makes you swim faster, but that's actually...
There is more to it, thankfully.
Here I was setting up a bit, and it turns out that I was the fool.
That's still a bit. You're just being the bit.
Yes.
One more big menu here coming up. This is probably the biggest menu in the game as far as equipment is concerned. So we're going to equip, we're going to hatch Salahammer to break diamond blocks. We're going to go ahead and swap it with Yowie here so that it's in a better spot in our menu. We're going to have to move a lot of equipment around here.
That's it. That's a good name, Salahammer.
Yeah, it is. A lot of the names in this game are just super, super spot on. Here, Bracer here. Frosty gets this and this. Teach some skills. Ice Blob gets this. So that skill that we just taught to Ice Blob is actually extremely important. So what that's going to allow is every single time Ice Blob shields something, it's going to be able to, on each hit of that shield, it can apply one of 3 debuffs, one of them being chill. So that way Ice Blob can also apply chill stacks more efficiently, and while it's still keeping our party alive. So now we have the next Alchemist. This is Razes. He's got some really, really scary monsters. So Fire Blob over there is actually another kind of supportive monster. Thankfully it dies really, really fast to congeal, so hopefully we're going to get a bunch of stacks on that really quickly. And then our next target is going to be Magma Moth, which is the evolution of Magma Pillar. And every single time we see that thing, it needs to die ASAP. It will absolutely murder Ice Blob at every opportunity it gets. And if there's any monster we absolutely need to keep alive, it's Ice Blob. Because without him, Congeal is not active, and that basically loses all of our damage. And yeah, you can see that just absolutely did a ton of damage there. And unfortunately, Frosty did not apply much chill there. Thankfully, even if Magma Moth doesn't die immediately, the fact that we chilled it will reduce its mana enough that it won't be using nearly as threatening abilities. So it's really just that first turn that's the scariest. Okay, that'll do it. Alright, now we're going to focus down Steam Golem. It's going to generate a lot of shields for the party. It's kind of its main purpose is just a shield bot. It's also weak to wind, which is really, really nice, since Frosty's our main actual damage dealer and also deals wind damage. Just going to kind of stay on top of clearing debuffs here. Unfortunately, every single time a monster has a shield, the shield isn't necessarily equivalent in size to the health bar beneath it. So like we're chipping through this shield extremely slowly, but like once we get to the actual health bar, it's gonna look like we're doing a lot more damage. We're gonna heal you again just a little bit. Alright, now we got Steam Golem at max stacks. We can kind of start ignoring it. Didn't really have a good time to put chill stacks on Mad Eye, unfortunately. Would have been nice to start getting that chip down. Again, kind of saving Mad Eye for last, because all it does is just put pretty insignificant debuffs on us. Imori, the little salamander guy with a spear, is also kind of an annoying enemy. It's going to heal off a stack of a debuff on it at the end of every turn. It is thankfully pretty susceptible to debuffs, so it will die pretty fast to chill, but we do just kind of need to lay on chill stacks on it. That did it, we're good. Okay, this is getting a little sketchy. We're gonna heal you up again. Gonna just get rid of you. Probably should have done it the other way around, but that's okay. This is definitely a little bit of a funky end to this fight, but we can just kind of get rid of Mad Eye there with our more raw damage dealers.
And Cat Zerker in the back is nice for those clutch moments.
Yeah. Eagle actually does quite a bit of damage here as well, especially given the fact that Mad Eye has that magic weakness. So unfortunately, all of Cat Zerker's damage is purely physical.
I can't imagine what the PvP meta of this game looks like.
I haven't ever looked too deep into it, but it gets pretty wild with, you know, the equipment setups that a lot of people have come up with and various team comps and things like that. A lot of the monsters end up having like pretty substantial use from what I can tell. Like there's very few monsters that you like, especially like playing the game like just by yourself, like there's very few monsters you can go wrong with. They all kind of have their niche, and as long as you're playing to that niche, then they're gonna do good work for you. So this is Asura. Absolutely no real-world relation to any deities named Asura or anything like that. But again, just going to die to congeal pretty quick here. So one main plot goal that we have right now is to access one of the endgame areas called the Underworld. We need Sanctuary tokens. We need 5 of them. and they're kind of our last big... a lot of the progression in this game is just keys, and that's our big key gate. So we're getting... A lot of our Sanctuary tokens are after specific champion monsters, so we're kind of targeting those. So we're going to head back. We're heading out of this area now. We're done in Magma Chamber. We're going to make a quick trip back to our good friend Razis, who is, yes, now our friend. He's defected from the Alchemists and is now going to help us. He kind of opens up a little shop, and that's about it. But we're going to get one pretty good piece of equipment from him. Oh, okay, he actually jumped in like an arc that dodged me, so he was otherwise probably going to be in the way there. So we're going to sell some stuff here that we don't need anymore. We're going to sell the 4K. We're going to grab the Cauldron. The Cauldron's main use is making our debuff stronger. And since Chill with Congeal is already kind of a double-dipped debuff, we're going to get double benefit out of that debuff bonus. It's not huge. It's 5% at base level, and I think by the time we upgrade it to where it's going to be, it's like 8 or 9%. So it's not a ton, but it does definitely help. Shout out to Dark Shifted Glodra there, that cool like red and purple color. It's kind of neat that they sort of worked in like the concept of shinies into an actual mechanical function. Okay, so we're gonna upgrade some more equipment here. Do those two. We're gonna upgrade the Gray Pearl that I touched on a little bit earlier. It's just our huge stat stick for monsters that are unshifted. And then we're gonna head back to Ancient Woods. Did we get? We did not get the evolution item for Dracogran, unfortunately, so we're just gonna hatch the egg for it that the egg mod is so gracious as to give us. We're gonna swap him with Blob here that we don't need anymore. We're going to swap in this new party that we're going to use for this grinding section coming up. We're going to level badge Dracogran to catch it up a little bit. We're going to teach some skills to it real quick. It's basically going to be our hit builder, and it's just going to build as many hits for that damage bonus as much as we can get. So we're going to equip stuff to you, upgrade your bracelet, give you the cauldron. Eagle's gonna get a Gray Pearl and this needle. And Dracogran is gonna just kind of get whatever else we have. Doesn't really too much matter what Dracogran gets as long as it gets something. So this is the tree that we usually would have evolved Dracogran at, but again, not getting to showcase that unfortunately because we did not get our item to drop.
Is there a backup to that, or can it be worked without it?
There was a lot of extra encounters we can do. Like, all those encounters in the last area that I skipped that had Dracograns in them can all drop it. So, you know, if you're trying to keep a run alive, you do those as well and hope to get the drop. But thankfully, for the sake of a marathon, we don't have to worry about that. So this is going to kind of be the opening of our big grinding section. We're really, really behind in levels at this point, and our next big power spike is going to be at level 20 when we get that next row of our skill tree. So we're going to be using this new party that we've built to just kind of blow through a bunch of goblin encounters. And that's going to serve double duty because, as I touched on earlier, we're also going to be using our second party is going to be entirely goblins. So we're just going to kind of incidentally get all the goblins we need to drop. We have one more alchemist fight here before the grind actually starts. This fight is actually kind of annoying. We don't have a super great way of dealing with it. Our AoE setup for the farm kind of gets through some of it. But Congeal also doesn't deal with this fight super great. There's also a lot of poison in this fight, which Kazurker is unfortunately susceptible to. Okay, that actually was a pretty good opening 3. And unfortunately, most of our damage here is physical, so this Mad Eye is going to end up getting left for last again, most likely. Thankfully, all this stuff here is weak to fire, which most of our damage is coming from Eagle right now, just using that big fire AoE explosion. It's actually going way better than it has been usually in practice recently.
They were all just melting there.
Yeah. And Kazurker actually lived, which is absurdly uncommon. Alright, so that's the next alchemist dealt with. We're basically not going to see him again. He's kind of the lamest of all of them. He ends up just getting captured and put in jail for the rest of the game, actually. So most of these fights are going to get dealt with in a single turn. There is, based on some damage rolls, you can just get left with stragglers. So in some of these fights, you're going to actually see that there's a hidden 6th star in the rating system. That's basically just from like one-turning encounters. Just gives you a little bit bonus drop rate on stuff that we don't super care about, but it looks cool. It makes me feel better at the game when I'm getting a special extra blue star. So you might see it as well here. There's a monster called Tanuki that, as its name suggests, can be a little mischievous little guy and randomly replace one monster slot in any encounter in the game, outside of like bosses and stuff. It's actually really annoying because he's a really tanky enemy. So a lot of these fights get slowed down if Tanuki shows up, and usually it shows up here just because this is the most encounter-dense area of the entire run.
Do you get any benefits for killing it? Like, is it like
Nope.
metal slime kind of thing?
Nope, I wish it was. I think it gives like slightly more experience just because monsters kind of have their own experience values, but it's not worth writing home about. So our main target here is going to be hitting level 19.25 or so on Eagle. I have kind of a visual cue for the experience bar that we're going to look for when we get closer. And basically what that's going to do is by the time we're done with the next boss and have to hatch a bunch more eggs, it's going to put Eagle at exactly level 20, which is going to put us at the exact XP threshold to get the highest level egg hatches as we can. And the goblins will start at level 18, we'll level badge them up to level 19, and then getting them to level 20 as fast as possible is absolutely crucial. They're going to hit level 20 basically right before the first encounter that we want to use them. So it ends up being really tight experience-wise. So it's kind of unfortunate a lot of the run is spent doing this grind, but it's kind of a nice breather from a lot of the movement and stressful fights of the rest of the game before this. This is also the kind of the last point in the run. I guess getting the Firestone evolution item from the last area is kind of the last threshold of like, I can get screwed over by really bad luck. So there are 2 more monsters that we need to drop after this. That being Polteruffen and Arachlich. And thankfully at that point we're able to buy an item called Monster Bells that basically instantly respawn all encounters that have been marked as cleared without us having to kind of go through that 5 encounter loop to make them respawn. So we can very quickly respawn encounters. And those are generally faster encounters to clear as well.
Well, what's a grind today could be found a way to skip later. So.
Yeah, the end game of this game is already really sketchy with this grind in. So we'd have to really come up with some crazy curse tech to really make the fights even sketchier and just full YOLO everything probably.
If there's anything I've learned from RPG speedruns, people will brain rot it.
Oh, for sure. Something Octopath, something. Why get 4 characters when you can just get 1? I was gonna say 3 and then I was like, wait, no, it gets worse. Thankfully here I can kind of keep an eye on the in-game timer up in the top right to kind of give myself an idea of where I'm at in the grind without having to like slow down and watch the experience screens or anything.
These
Yeah.
are like little goblin farmers.
They are. Little warlock farmers. Something else that comes into play with this grind too is we have limited items accessible in order to either dark or light shift our remaining party. So any goblins that show up here randomly shifted are massively beneficial. Ideally we're getting dark shifted ones, which are the purple and black ones. But if they come light shifted, we can also use an item called a switch stone that just switches its shift from one shift to the other. So try saying that 5 times fast. So yeah, there's shift stones that will shift unshifted monsters, switch stones that will switch already shifted monsters, and then clear stones that will clear a shift if it's shifted and you don't want it to be. And actually we want Aracklich, which is the last monster we need to get. We want that unshifted so that it can hold the Gray Pearl. So we're going to ideally get an unshifted one. There's really easy clear stones to grab to unshift it if necessary.
More friends.
More friends. So yeah, for the progression out of Ancient Woods as well, I mentioned earlier we need 4 different orb-related monster abilities. We need Fire, Water, Lightning, and Earth. We are missing Earth and Lightning currently, and conveniently enough, Goblin Brute, the one with the little club, gives us Earth, and the Goblin Warlock, the ones with the little forks, are Lightning. So we're going to just kind of cover our last required monster abilities to get past that gate just by doing this grind as well, which is really, really nice. Where are we at? We're at 17. A little bit more to go. Unfortunately, this game doesn't really have any sort of catch-up experience like the modern Pokemon games have. So it is kind of annoying to get monsters caught up to higher levels. Especially with those level badges I touched on earlier coming into play where like you can only use them so much to catch monsters up.
Made mention of an oven early on. when does that come into play?
That's almost immediately after this.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to get through the rest of Ancient Woods. We're going to tag Horizon Beach. Oh, here's our first Tanuki. Also friend-shaped.
Friend-shaped, but also mischievous-shaped.
Yes.
Oh my god, it swings its tail at you.
But yeah, lives the first opening explosion. Generally will shield itself. Just kind of a little mischievous turd. It doesn't waste it too terribly ton of time. It's fine. Yeah, it's kind of funny. The way the randomizer works that's in the game is it replaces every monster species with another monster species. And that goes for Tanuki as well. So there is just a Tanuki slot that every single time a Tanuki would pop up, it will be like whatever different monster it is. So you could have like Cat Zerker be in the Tanuki slot and just have random Cat Zerkers showing up everywhere. It's really, really funny.
What would be the scariest thing to show up in the Tanuki slot?
Probably the final boss.
That could happen.
Yeah, so the Mad Eye enemies that every single alchemist has had, the evolution for it that you don't get access to until after you beat the game is the final boss. It's like basically just Satan, for lack of a better way to put it. And he's really, really like big and chunky, does a lot of damage, does a lot of debuffs. Not too terribly hard to deal with, but in a randomizer setting, you might not have a party that's very good at dealing with it, especially if they show up early.
Just having a good time, and then suddenly out of nowhere, hey.
Ah, Satan! One more encounter and we'll be good to go. Checked at the perfect time. And I think we got all of our shifted goblin needs taken care of. I don't remember if we got a dark goblin brute, but I know for sure we had 2 dark goblin hoods show up, so. As long as like some amount of stuff comes pre-shifted to what you want, you're generally gonna be fine. As long as you don't have to shift absolutely everything. You can also, like, get through the run with Polteruffen unshifted, but it's such a boon to you that it's going to make the end game a lot harder if you don't have it shifted. So it's definitely our lowest priority, but it's still fairly close to being required. So still taking these last couple encounters in the quote-unquote Goblin Fortress, which is just a treehouse of weird sticks. They're goblins, okay? They aren't the highest class of individuals.
Yeah, it still looks better than anything that I could build in Terraria.
True. This game does have a lot of, like, Terraria graphical vibes, I feel like. And there's one more goblin, Dark Goblin, just for good measure. Alright, so now we have our next champion monster, which is the Goblin King. This is the only champion monster in the run that's going to have additional helpers. Fortunately, we're kind of equipped with a big AoE setup that's just going to kind of blow them up. That one lived, that's a little annoying. It's very rare for any of them to live the first turn. So that's totally fine. And now we're actually doing damage, because level ups actually matter quite a lot. So we don't have to sit here and wait for Congeal to do it. Unfortunately, we are now done with that party now that they have finally earned their keep. They're going to get replaced by little gobos. Alright, so now we get to do a bunch of hatching. We did get a Dark Goblin Brute, which is really good. The Goblin Brute shifts, you can make either work. So the Dark Goblin Brute gives you an extra weapon slot, and the light one gives you an extra accessory slot. And those both can be used to enhance your damage a decent amount. Not a crazy amount, but enough. Thanks, EduDrop Mod. We have 48 regular Goblin Hoodics. Alright, so we're going to move stuff around here. We're going to switch our Congeal party back in here. We're going to switch these guys in. We're going to move Dracogran and Koi to spots that will be convenient to get through in the menu. And then we're going to level badge our guys that we just hatched.
It is nice that you can swap around parties later on like this. It does add a bit of variety to the run.
Yeah, it is actually really nice if you're playing the game casually and you have a bunch of different party setups you want to switch between. There is actually a menu option to use presets. So you can kind of really quickly switch around different compositions and kind of mess around with different things. So this game is really nice as far as experimenting with different stuff. And because of the way that the egg hatching works, if you ever like go back to a previous area and want to get like a monster from the first area of the game, if you get the egg and then hatch it later, it's going to be caught up to a level that's pretty similar to the rest of your party. So you don't have the Pokemon problem of catching something that's level 5 when you're like level 40, and it's like, all right, well, you're not getting used. So this monster has a gimmick that we basically just ignore because Congeal is ridiculously powerful. That enemy is called Verduga. It's the only monster in the game that, it's kind of the Kecleon of this game. It just kind of shifts its weakness around every turn. But yeah, we don't care because we just Congeal it to death. Alright, so now we're going back to the Keeper's Stronghold. And now we can actually buy Crystal Shards and Smoke Bombs, so we don't have to worry about conserving our limited amount of running away. So we're going to need 6 of these for the rest of the game. We're going to buy a bunch of these. We don't need Monster Bells because our egg drops are guaranteed. So we're just going to proceed on. So now that we have improved flying, we can access to the semi-final area of the game, which is Mystical Workshop. We're kind of just dipping here really quick to get Polteruffen, as well as tag the fast travel point here for later. And we get a couple nice pieces of equipment from here as well. So yeah, this little vertical section that we ran by earlier is actually where we need to fly up into now that we can. So we don't get a ton more height off of improved flying, but it is enough to get us through here. Breaking a hidden wall here for another skill potion. The nice thing about skill potions, since we can only use them on each monster once, we just kind of only have to worry about getting as many as we have monsters. There isn't like there isn't room for us to just kind of pump all of them into one monster, which is kind of nice to not have to worry about routing-wise. A lot of individual skills don't end up making a huge impact on their own, but there are some key ones, like, Congeal, for instance, that make a massive, massive difference in the amount of damage that you're dealing. Okay, these Polteruffens did not come pre-shifted, but that's fine. Also something, why do they call it an uffin?
Why do they call it oven when you of? out the cold food, out hot eat the food. I
You
tried to do it from memory. somebody can donate and have the entire thing in its correct form.
Yes. So thankfully all these guys die pretty fast to congeal. We're gonna get a pretty good rating here. We're gonna hatch him in just a moment.
Speaking of donations, we have a $25 donation from Wef Jebster, who says, "Let's go, show them your rare aura aura. Rar."
Okay, so now we have this golem that's actually friendly. Actually, we didn't have to sell him, so we're just gonna do our menu here. Gonna hatch Polteruffen. We're gonna switch it in for Magma Pillar. Goodbye, little bug buddy. You did good. We're going to make use of a nice little button this game has that I probably used earlier and I haven't touched on yet. But there is just a hotkey for mass unequipping everything from the monsters that you don't have in your active 6, which is really nice for switching off of old party members.
Oh,
You can just take off everything off of them all at once.
More games need that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. We're going to open these just to see if we get anything in them. Nothing. We're going to level badge Polteruffen. I'm going to crystal shard out of here. We do need to do a little bit of skill teaching here. So since Polteruffen isn't quite level 20 yet, and we don't have access to that next tier of skills, we are actually going to hold on to some skill points here for once it does reach level 20, because the rest of what we could teach it here is not really very beneficial to us. Teaching some more shield utility here. Getting a bunch of upgrades for Spectral Flame for one champion monster coming up. We're going to dip over here to the blacksmith, upgrade the shield generator that we just bought. Basically just a piece of equipment that's going to give the monster that it's on a pretty sizable shield at the start of every turn. I'm going to upgrade the cauldron too. Unfortunately, one steel dropped short of upgrading shield generator again, but that's fine. We can hopefully make that up later. So we're heading back to Snowy Peaks. There's a bit of a story trigger here and another champion monster that we need to beat to progress the story. Thankfully, we can go through here and get a couple of extra shift stones and skill potions and things. Some more crafting materials. And this is going to be yet another champion monster that just kind of dies to congeal. Surprise, surprise. This monster is actually one that I've tried to work into the route a couple times. It also gets access to congeal as well as the abilities that let you stack extra stacks of chill. But it just kind of takes too much investment, and it's largely a critical strike focused monster. And a lot of our crit based items are going to end up going towards the goblins, so they're going to be pretty occupied already. It is a really cool monster.
I love the animations.
Every single debuff proc just looking like it's getting bonked in the head is really, it's never not funny. So yeah, now that we hit the level 20 threshold with Ice Blob specifically, we got access to a new skill called Ice Shield. That's going to be really nice as far as it shields our entire party. It also applies chill to something at random, and it synergizes with the other skill that we taught earlier that will randomly apply debuffs whenever we shield something. So we're able to get a bunch of stacks of chill off of just shielding a single time. So now we get to head back to Horizon Beach. This is our big water level of the game, and also my favorite song in the game. It's like a really good bop and chill at the same time. It's great. I'm gonna pick up one backup shift stone here.
And there's crabs.
I shouldn't need it, but there are crabs. That's another actually really good monster is the crab. It's another like crit-focused DPS monster, but it applies a lot of weakness, which is just like an armor break kind of thing. That just multiplies its damage that much more. There's a lot of really solid like crit-focused compositions for the PvP. And I think Auklet, the champion monster we just took down, and Ukan, the crab, are pretty common teammates. Toxicus was way up there. Some of the enemies just get lost. It's okay.
The koi hatch is making sense now.
Yes. So these little water currents are what you're allowed to swim through if you have improved swimming. But we barely have to go through any of them, and they just kind of take us the way we're supposed to go anyway. There is one we kind of slip through. That's never happened before. Add another one to the count. Fortunately, that's really slow to fix. That's okay. These water currents kind of have weird hitboxes, and they can kind of just like suck you in really easily. Because they kind of extend a lot past where you would think them to, where they would stop. Okay. And yeah, that water current below, like what happened is like I got shot out too fast, and I kind of have to like hard brake and stop myself. The swimming controls are a little weird. If you don't touch any inputs, you kind of like gradually dip down, but while you're holding a direction, you don't have that dip. So it's kind of weird to like feel like you're accounting for a dip that isn't there. And it's also like kind of hard to just rotate your thumb on the D-pad and like gradually adjust your verticality while also going left and right. So just kind of taking it slow there. Hitting those spikes is really, really slow. So basically the thing we're trying to do in this area is find all of our friends, at least 2 of our friends that are here, Leonard and Julia, the ones that aren't the nerd. And there's a big gate that we need 3 people to step on switches for. So obviously we need friends to do that. I'm gonna swim back through these spikes, unfortunately. It's not enough to have to do it once. It's also a little weird too with the swimming. You kind of notice me like bobbing up and down slightly when I'm just holding straight right or left. So you kind of have to account for that too and how much you adjust for where you're going. Alright, so this one we kind of have to hug the left and not get sucked into that current. But it's pretty lenient. It's pretty hard to get sucked in there. Now we found our friends. They opened up the door for us. Pretty cool looking door, big scary shark mouth thing.
You're going into underwater Ridley's lair.
Yes.
Do I have time to read a donation?
Yeah, you have time for some.
We have a $10 donation from the Flying Marlin, who says, "Why do they call it oven when you oven the cold food? Of out, hot, eat the food."
There we go.
There we go.
Thank you, Marlin.
I was reciting it from memory, so and it's a mess of words. So
You made an attempt and you fueled donations, so I mean, you really can't go wrong. Alright, so we're going to have another keeper battle here. This is the last one that we're not using the Goblin Party for. Now, the Goblin Party isn't quite ready to go yet. They're not level 20. So we're going to be using Congeal for one last keeper fight here. At least primarily for one keeper fight here. So Polteruffen doesn't have its main shielding utility yet. It will kind of replace Magma Pillar fully as a shielder later. But it is also just kind of a burn applier, and it also has a passive that allows it to apply extra stacks of burn. So that's going to just add to our dot potential. This fight's pretty straightforward. There isn't really anything here that's super, super threatening. And one of Polteruffen's main gimmicks that you're kind of seeing here as well is that it automatically heals and shield itself based on the mana it regenerates. So we can just kind of equip it with a bunch of mana regeneration items, and it keeps itself alive pretty easily. Basically just don't have to do anything to commit to keeping it alive. Fortunately, Frosty's kind of slacking here. Should hopefully be enough there. Yeah, okay. There's a lot of kind of eyeballing damage ranges from damage over time stuff that you kind of have to get used to optimize a lot of these fights. It's going to definitely come into play with our Goblin Party later on as well. Okay, Frosty's putting in work now. Just barely not enough, though. Needed one more stack to take it out there, but that's okay. So So Julia was just basically testing us before the next champion monster that's coming up here. So this is one of the most annoying champion monsters in the game because it has debuff resistance. And what that means is Congeal is not going to do basically anything. So we're going to actually have to deal with it the old-fashioned way. We are still going to apply chill stacks just for the mana regeneration debuff. But it is occasionally going to heal those stacks off, so keeping it fully debuffed is not going to be super feasible for us.
Go the old-fashioned way of attacking it until it dies.
Yes. Its only weakness is neutral, unaspected attacks. So that's the main reason we upgraded Spectral Flame on Frosty here. It's actually a significant amount of damage on something that's otherwise pretty dang bulky. And you can see these chill stacks just doing absolutely nothing. One more turn should get us there. And there we go. So this is another champion monster that's guarding another sanctuary token. So we're going to go ahead and grab that before we get out of here. Alright, another pretty big menu here. Our goblins are finally level 20, so we're going to get them set up with some fun stuff. Put a bunch of stuff on here. Give you the Moon Sword, a bunch of DPS stuff. Our kind of strategy with the goblins here is to more or less even out their crit stats and their damage potential. We want them to do roughly about the same amount. We're going to make sure the back goblin does a little bit more, though, just because it's going to be last in the turn order and making the most benefit from the game's combo system. So we're going to go ahead and shift Polter up in here so that we have that taken care of. You can see that aura that it has that it gets from being dark shifted. It's going to give all of our monsters extra stat efficiency, which is really, really nice. Basically just makes all of the gear we have that much better. Doing the exact same skill teach for both of our Goblin Hoods. They basically have two main attacks. It's Fire Arrow and Ice Arrow. And they deal burn and chill respectively. So they're yet more chill application as backups for when the goblin party ends up biting the dust. Okay, teaching some more stuff to you. And now we have basically the fire equivalent of Ice Blob's Ice Shield. We have Fire Shield that will, as the name suggests, burn things when we apply it. So just more debuff application for us. So we're going to buy some crafting materials now that we can. Do one big last set of upgrades. I'm gonna have to sell some stuff. Sell you. Sell some of this stuff we don't need. We need a Verdant Gem, which we got to drop. A lot of this is very variable, just based on the number of stuff or number of things that got dropped earlier. So thankfully, okay, we got all those. So we're gonna upgrade Moon Sword to +4, Pirate Hook to +3. Drum to +3, Cauldron to +3, and then we're still short a steel on that, so that's fine. Alright, so now we have to do one quick story trigger. We have to talk to another one of our friendly cast of characters named Eric, who's currently interrogating the green alchemist that we captured earlier, trying to get access to the abandoned tower, figuring out where the abandoned tower is, because that's basically where all the bad guys are holed up doing their stuff. We're going to quick warp out of there. That's all we really had to do there. We're going to warp back to Blue Caves. Now that we have 4 of the 5 Sanctuary tokens, we can go ahead and head towards... Shout out to Dark Frosty. He's really, really cool little purple blob guy. So we're heading to the entrance to the Underworld now that we have 4 of the 5 Sanctuary tokens, because we're going to get the last one from the fight here. We're going to go ahead and fight Eric as a test. A lot of our friends just like testing us. And now we're just going to see the absolute raw damage capability of the goblins. And based on what kind of damage rolls we get, what extra hits we get to proc, what crits we get, Goblin Brute usually dies pretty fast, so don't worry about it. It's fine. We can potentially one attack kill a lot of these monsters. Unfortunately, we're not getting so lucky. But still, like, two actioning, killing each of them is still pretty efficient. Take out Amori here. So yeah, basically the strategy with the Goblin Party every time we use it is glass cannon our way through as much as possible, and then use the Congeal Party to clean up. Take care of you, good.
Sounds like it's different music for fighting your friends.
This is Eric specifically.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's definitely no ominous implication for him having his own music. Definitely don't worry about that whatsoever.
I'll take your word for it at face value.
Yep. Suspect nothing. Alright, so now we have Underworld. This is definitely the most complicated area of the entire game, and yet another area that's going to be extremely confusing casually. And also a lot of areas where it's kind of annoying to get past the encounters. So we need one more progression. Okay, I tried to shove them out of the way. That's another thing monsters can do too when you run away. They can just like ice skate and just like slide into you again. That one tried. So the last exploration ability we need here is Grapple, and it does exactly what it sounds like it does. It lets us grapple two little grapple hooks placed throughout areas. And the monster that gives that to us is a Raklich, which is basically going to be our Frosty replacement as well. So it's going to serve double duty for us in that regard. We are going to have one more Keeper fight before we worry about getting it, though. That's a Raklich right there in the middle. But normally in a normal run without the mod, you would save getting it until after the Leonard fight, because there's an encounter that has two of them in it. And since we won't have any of the monsters that are in these encounters, we need to have the maximum amount of chances to roll the Raklich drop. These enemies are just being epic. That's okay, that's what we have a lot of smoke bombs for.
You don't really have much room to work with either.
And yeah, a lot of the areas here are like really, really tight. There's a lot more sections here where you're going to end up kind of using the encounter positioning to move monsters out of the way.
Your notes have this very complicated looking map for this.
Yes. This is the only map that I've kept. I kind of have like part of my notes that's like, here's the fully detailed section for like new runners. And then there's like the condensed for use during runs version. And this is the only map that I keep in my notes because I just never trust my memory. So we're going to do a little bit of a switch puzzle here to get one more skill potion. And then we're going to proceed on to the fight with Leonard, the last of our friends who we have not yet fought.
Do I have time for a donation?
You sure do.
We have $15 from Dr. T Chops, who says, "You call it oven because you off in the cold food so it gets hot. Then you take it out to get it cooled off again, like an offen."
Thanks, Chops.
That's a good one.
That is pretty good, yeah.
Thanks, Chops.
Okay, we actually got really good luck there. So we're basically trying to take care of the mole bear there first, because it has a passive ability that will just block damage from the other monsters. You can kind of just gamble based on the damage rolls you get and try to just get damage off. But we got a bunch of burn stacks on the second enemy we're trying to take out there. Unfortunately, the Goblin Party's going to die pretty fast here, so we're going to switch to our backup. Thankfully, the goblins still do a ton of damage even without all the goblin buffs. Like, we just shredded that dodo to bits. Let's target you first. Almost. Still a pretty good fight, though, even though the goblins both died. Or, yeah, two of them died. Alright, now we can proceed to the even more convoluted part of Underworld after we run into more enemies that are running around. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. That particular encounter is just really annoying because we actually have to stop there and pull out a different monster and take our time to line up the glide. Alright, so this is a lot of hitting switches to move these big rock walls and kind of having to do a lot of loops around this area. We're just going to do like a big swirly around this area a bunch of times to eventually access the champion monster here that's going to give us access to the Key of Power, which is the last item we realistically need to access the final area of the game. So we're getting our Oraklech here. The one on the right is dark shifted, the one on the left is regular shifted, so we're going to end up getting the one that we want. Wow, that actually ended up killing him. Okay. I don't think I've ever had Polterruffen die there. But that's fine. We have our Congealer still alive, so it's definitely fine. We should all die here. Not quite. Okay, so we're not going to put Oraklech in our active party just yet. Or I guess we're not going to do any more fights with it, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But we're going to hatch Oraklech. We're going to give it the level badge and a skill potion just to catch it up on stuff. And then we're going to switch it in here. We're not going to be using it quite yet, but we're just going to proceed on. So we're going to get a quick glimpse at there's kind of a little side area here. That little guy on the left is actually a monster in disguise. It's called Spinner. It's actually a really cool monster to use. But you have to do this like little mini kind of maze to get it. It's pretty slow, so we're not going to get him, unfortunately. He's got a fun little evil laugh. So using Drakagran here to kind of avoid some platforming off on the left of the room. Just a small little time save. So now that we've hit the switches to open up the rest of the bottom section of this tower, we're going to hop out and go to a tunnel that's accessible back out here. Grab some items on the bottom, and then also open up the rest of the doors that we need to the top. Yeah, like this area, you just have so many areas that you need to like go super far away from where you're actively doing stuff and then go back to where you were, and like there's just a lot of running around, and it's really easy to kind of lose track of what walls you're moving and what walls you still need to move. See, a lot of the stuff we're picking up here is +5 equipment. It's going to be very, very good for us. Okay. Barely dodged that guy.
I was just sitting there dabbing in front of you.
Yeah, I was like, okay, he's either going to turn around. Like, I'm just going to hold left and hope he walks away. Alright, so now we've lowered that. We can go out onto the, I guess, the roof, essentially. Hit a couple more switches, because we love hitting switches.
You got me. I'm lost here.
Yeah. This area is extremely confusing. And it's funny, too, because most of the areas in this game have, like, multiple keys that lock off various doors. This one only has one, and they still made it this complicated. Alright, we actually get to use grapple here. It does kind of bug out sometimes, which is a little annoying. The targeting on it is just a little funky. Okay. Now we're going to activate another grapple hook so that now we can open up the final door to the champion monster. And then we have to loop all the way back around this tower because this lowers the wall that allows us to go back through the bottom way. Go ahead and do the rest of the menuing we need to here. Get Oraklech set up with some stuff. So yeah, like I said, Oraklech is going to largely take up the same purpose that Frosty did. It's going to be our pretty heavy chill applicator. Also is going to have a lot of other debuffs. Like it's going to introduce poison to the mix. It's also going to add a passive ability that's going to need to get rid of this stuff. It's going to give us a passive that whenever enemies take damage from a debuff, it's going to build up a stack of bleed that kind of stores that damage. So they're basically just going to be taking all of the dots twice, so to speak. Thanks, Grapple. Love ya.
Are there any other grapple points in the game, or is it
There's a
just
lot,
those?
actually. They definitely scattered them out throughout the rest of the game a lot more than a lot of other progression things. Just because you do have access to... This is the first area that you have access to it. So there's really no other option that you have as far as... I forgot to move stuff around, that's fine. So yeah, this is another champion monster that, once again, Congeal is the star of the show. Actually, remember to switch Ice Bolt in here. Rock Glitch also does like a decent amount of damage on its own as well. It's kind of nice. And that's Draconoir taken care of. So we're going to go ahead and open this chest for the Key of Power, which accesses the final dungeon of the game. And with that, we're going to go ahead and Crystal Shard back to the Keeper's Stronghold. And we're going to immediately warp to Mystical Workshop one more time. We need to finish up this area before we have true access to the final dungeon. There's 3 keys we need to get here to open up the door that goes to the door that we need the Key of Power for. Lots of switches to hit switches, lots of doors to go to doors. This is yet another alchemist that we basically haven't seen up until now who's also on our side. Just a bunch of alchemists defecting because they realize that the bad guy is not that great after all. Whoever the bad guy might be, I don't know if he's had some sort of disguise on this entire time or something. I don't know.
It's you. You're the bad guy the whole time.
Oh my god. That's why I don't talk. I would accidentally monologue. Sometimes you just open your mouth and you can't help but have an evil monologue. Grabbing more equipment, another Mystical Workshop key. All of the green chests in the game are like key items. So all of these green chests you've seen me pick up have been keys. And there's also blue chests that are in kind of hidden away areas that are different cosmetics that you can unlock for your character, which is pretty neat. And of course it had to be an Ornithopter that was included.
Always got to be aware of the main Phase 2 Ornithopter.
Yes. The pre-land drop Ornithopter. Alright, so now we have another kind of wild switch puzzle. We thankfully don't need to get the chest, so we don't need to do even more steps of this to get to there. We just need to get through that top gate there. A lot of just zigzagging on the same switches over and over again. It's kind of the theme of a lot of the puzzles in this game, but it does actually make them like kind of confusing, because you end up not thinking there's like that much to it, and then it's like, oh, okay. So they're kind of good and bad in their own regard. Alright, this encounter going the other way is kind of annoying. Yeah. It is funny when you run away from encounters and enemies kind of sometimes ice skate. They can fall out of their like preset roaming zone. So like in that spot in particular, like enemies can just ice skate off the ledge and then they're like down on the lower platform where you still need to walk through. Alright, so this next key is actually hidden behind some mimics. This is another really cool monster. Another really cool like crit focused DPS monster. And we're just going to kind of AoE them down here. And they should ideally die at the same time on the next turn. Pump a little bit more into this one to make sure. The left one might not die. Yeah. Didn't get great stack application there, but that's fine. Still pretty fast. Grab the last workshop key, head our way up to the top. Again, using Dracogran to kind of skip some platforming off on the other side of the room. And these are the little locks we needed the Mystical Workshop keys for. Very unassuming little barriers. Just gonna grab one more piece of food here. Good old banana. We're gonna take on our last true champion monster of the game outside of the final boss. Yet another goblin. This is a really powerful goblin as well. Unfortunately, it's just kind of too late in the game for us to catch it up to proper power. Otherwise, we probably would use this thing. It is part of some of the best goblin compositions.
What a good goblin.
What goblin? He got congealed. Alright, so we have to hit one final switch here in this rather ominous Mad Eye Sanctuary.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah. Alright, we have one more decently sized menu here just to update our equipment with some of the stuff that we got. This feather's going to go to +5. We're going to feed some more food to our guys, which we haven't done in a while. We're going to put a lot of crit food on our goblins to maximize their damage. We're going to give some mana to Arachlich. Defense to you. And then some health to you. We're going to teach some more skills. Ice Blob. Ice Blob largely is just going to get defense increases here, because that's about the only other beneficial thing we can give it. And then we're going to Crystal Shard out of here. Do one last little trip of upgrading, see if we got anything else we can upgrade. Get our Cauldron to +4. I actually should have done the shield generator there, that's fine. Not a huge deal. And then we're going to head into the final dungeon. So this is another comparison that I like to make to Forbidden Memories. This is basically Final 6, sort of. This is just a slew of fights, nothing else we're doing here. Just trying to not die to fights that are way higher level than us. We do have the game set to the casual difficulty, but the game still has hands, for sure.
Wait, is that Will? Is he testing?
It is Will. He is testing us. So he had his monster stolen, like a little dork. And he's basically like, I'm proving myself. I'm still, like, worthwhile to come with you guys to the final area. I'm still strong, I promise. And it's actually funny, because his Spectral monster is probably, like, the worst monster that he has.
Look, Will did a very important thing and figured out the triangle puzzle.
He did. He's earned his keep just from that alone. He doesn't have to do anything else. And unfortunately, our guys are just getting murdered here. Should still be fine. This fight isn't terribly scary. It just ends up going pretty slow if we get luck like this. A kind of annoying downside to how the monster swapping happens when you have one of them die. You can only revive monsters once your party is, like, empty, so to speak. So, like, right now, the 3 monsters that are dead, I can't revive because I don't have, like, an empty active slot. So you have to be really careful about the order that you send your monsters out. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with a really crucial monster not able to be revived at all. So ideally, in a lot of these fights, when the goblin party dies, we want it to die as close to each other as possible. And if anything dies first, we want to replace it with Polterruffen, because if we replace it with, like, Ice Blob, for instance, and Ice Blob dies, we're never getting Ice Blob back, and that's basically all of our damage gone. And that definitely makes a lot of these fights a lot scarier than they otherwise would be. Not quite. And that is the first of our 6 final fights. All the rest of them are going to be against alchemists. Will is the only one of our friends that we had to fight. The rest of our friends are going to kind of follow us throughout the dungeon and do nothing of particular consequence. But they're there for emotional support.
The power of friendship is very powerful.
Yes. Especially when all of your friends have friend-shaped monsters.
Yes.
It's the 6 degrees of friendship separation or something. So this area can kind of get confusing as well. There's a lot of offshoot areas for a lot of extra items that just kind of don't do us any good right now. We're basically as strong as we're going to get. So there's a lot of areas that kind of look like you're supposed to go a certain way and you're not. But thankfully we know where to go.
What's this we? I don't know where we're going. Don't ask me for directions.
That's fair. Alright, so next we're going to fight 2 alchemists at once. That's not going to change the composition of the fight. It's still 6v6. They're just kind of holding hands while they're trying to kick our butts. Okay, we're going to do this way. So Goblin Warlock is one of a group of monsters that have a self-revive when they die the first time. Thankfully, they come back with basically no HP whatsoever. So if we take it out and then it comes back and it has enough debuffs on it, we're going to be able to just take it out from there, which thankfully is what happens. There's only 2 other monsters in the rest of this dungeon, the rest of the fights, that we're going to have to worry about that. Okay, well, I said about our goblin party dying at the same time. Masterfully executed. We did great. Would have liked them to do a little bit more. Ideally, they would have gotten rid of the Keelan as well, but they did not. Yeah, and kind of distributing our debuff stacks. Trying to not waste hits or debuff applications on things that are already going to die. And definitely investing as many resources as we can without losing too much time into keeping Ice Blob alive. Because if Ice Blob dies, thankfully we can revive it at this point, but we waste a ton of time trying to not have congeal. And yeah, you can see those final chunks when they're taking the dot damage. That's the bleed stacks from a Racklich going to work. And they just do an absolute ton of damage. That was actually a pretty clean end. That Toxicus can stay alive for quite a while. So that was a pretty good fight despite the goblins dying early. One other kind of weird quirk that you kind of have to keep in mind with a lot of the fight execution in this game, based on the side that you are on in the encounter, it's going to affect your menus in, like, when you pick your monsters at the start. It's going to affect which, like, order your monsters in as far as, like, tabbing between them. So it's definitely something to, like, keep in the back of your head when you're, like, doing these fights, not to menu them backwards, so to speak.
That's one of the boss monsters you fought earlier.
Yeah, so once again, Elder Gel, very, very immune to debuffs. Or not immune, but very, very resistant to them. Okay, didn't quite take it out. I kind of managed my damage a little weird there. This is a fight that I might just reset if it... Yeah, I think I'm just going to reset this. Take it safe. This is definitely the scariest fight in the game. Getting this Elder Gel dead is definitely a problem. Also should probably do extra skill teaching.
So this is what the Goblin Party is for then, just because they just do raw damage to kill it.
Yeah, you want to just get through as much of it as possible. But yeah, if you try to back that up with the Congeal Party, like from the state that I was at, I would just sit there forever, burn a bunch of items, and then probably still die, and then not have the items for future attempts. So we definitely don't want that. Dang, it's rather unfortunate. Yeah, Elder Gel has the self-revive, so we kind of want to, like, deplete its first health bar and then take out the self-revive all at once. This is part of the purpose of me doing damage in that order. This should be fine. Okay, do that. Yeah, this is wasting a lot of damage that could have gone elsewhere, but this will be fine. We're going to invest a little bit into keeping this guy alive. Still going to do a little bit of work. Do my absolute best to not waste items here in case we have to redo this fight again. Okay, I want to focus Grulu next because it's the healer essentially, Thankfully it went down right away. Okay, that is actually... no, I'm not going to waste time trying to win that. That was a situation where I couldn't revive Ice Blob, so we were basically having to use Goblin Hood's damage there, and that just was not going to pan out. We aren't going to force wasting time on a fight that is already lost, basically. Okay, that's not too bad. This will be fine. Okay, that back. Okay, the Goblin Brute died. Back Goblin Brute died. That's fine. Again, just having to waste a lot of our turn damage on taking this thing out. When this fight goes well, it goes extremely well, but when it goes bad, it's just absolutely catastrophic. Yeah, this is also not looking great. So yeah, that's the joy of running this game without the guaranteed egg drops. There's a lot of times you'll fight through the early game for getting your drops. You finally, you know, you've been grinding for like 3 hours just to get out of the first 20 minutes, and then you get to the end of the game and this guy just murders you. This game is definitely brutal when it wants to be. Okay, yeah. I should have invested more into keeping him alive. If we get a good opener and get that Elder Gel dead, it's fine. We just need that to actually happen.
It's going to cooperate this time, I believe.
This time for sure. Unfortunately, we're kind of at the mercy too. The Goblin passives apply random buffs at the start of their turns as well, so like we can get really lucky and get really beneficial buffs as well. Okay, that's fine. Unfortunately, that little bit of shield it usually gives itself too also makes things difficult. Okay, that Goblin died. That's maybe fine. I need to stop saying things are fine because then they're not fine. Yeah, we'll just hope this works again. Yeah, basically every one of these fights I've had to waste an entire extra turn to taking out the Elder Gel. That's just really backbreaking. So we are kind of on a clock with a lot of this. Try to avoid using items still, because I don't feel super confident about this. Okay. That might be fine. Okay, I think we're good from here. Thankfully, Nautilid, the thing that's on the left now, is weak to debuffs, so it will take a lot of damage from all of our debuffing stuff. We're still going to have to make sure that you don't die, though. We'll get rid of your debuffs first. That poison's going to end up doing more than anything else. Thankfully, our Aracklich has a self-res. This is still really sketchy. We're going to just chain get our party up here. Nautilid didn't quite die there. Okay, we gotta get him up. Okay, Nautilid's gonna die here. Okay, we should be good from here. Get you up. Definitely one of the sketchiest fights I've seen work, but I'll take it. Thankfully, the rest
Ooh.
of the fights from here are a lot less scary.
That fight is nasty.
Yeah, it's really awful. Go ahead and teach a couple more things for good measure. A lot of these kind of later skill teaches are more or less safety, but again, they're one of those things that's not like technically required, but it's basically required. Alright, this fight should go a lot more smoothly. We kind of just like melt this third slot the entire fight. This guy has the 3 other spectral monsters that were stolen from our party member, our friends. And they've all been dark shifted, they've been made evil. And coincidentally, they're going to be our first focus in every single one of these turns. Unfortunately, missed a lot there, but that's fine. There isn't a whole lot this fight can do back to you. Okay, we got a little bit of extra damage. We'll just lay that to Frosty here. Thankfully, a lot of the spectral monsters are kind of jack-of-all-trades monsters that more or less fall off at the end of the game. So these guys aren't super, super threatening, and they just kind of die. At this point, if the Goblin Party dies, we don't care too much. Ultraruffin is not getting to stay alive very much, though. We're not going to be able to heat up our pizza rolls.
Not gonna own out, not eat the food.
Yes. Okay, that's fine. Okay, we are gonna just take a stall turn here. Just barely not having the wolf die is kind of annoying. Yeah, we're just gonna ice bolt it just to make sure it dies. Should be reasonably fine from here out. We've had debuff stacking on these other two for basically the entire fight. So they should both die here. Yeah. Yeah, those bleed stacks, if you have dots rolling on them the entire fight, those bleeds just get absolutely huge. Alright, so now we have Eric, who's actually like some dark sorcerer named Marduk, and he's evil. What a shock. So this is another kind of annoying fight. There's 2 monsters we need to die here really, really quick. Which is the first one that already got taken out, and then Asura. Thankfully, this is probably okay. Asura is another monster that has a self-revive.
Seen an awful lot of the boss monsters show up here.
Yeah, they lay it on pretty hard at the end here. Get some stacks rolling on Mad Eye. Okay, that's a little sketchy. Okay, we should be able to ignore Dracogran here. Let's focus on staying alive. I'm just gonna have you guys heal yourselves. Unfortunately, the potions in this game that actually heal your entire team really don't do a whole lot, so they're kind of useless. Okay, that's pretty annoying. Unfortunately, we're at a point where his buffs have just gotten to stack up really, really high. Yeah, we'll start burning stuff. If we get just one of the dragons dead, we're probably in the clear. One on the right, Drakazul, is more of a supportive one. I say as it just shreds the crap out of Ultra. Generally, it kind of sits there just doing like supportive stuff. Okay. 1 or 2 more turns and we should be there. And then after this, we've got one more fight with the actual final boss, one more champion monster, which is the Satan that's apparently been possessing Eric and is making him Marduk or something, if I remember correctly. Satan bad, kill Satan. Something, something. Oh. And thankfully, this is another kind of straightforward fight. We're just going to congeal it to death, as is tradition. So time is going to be coming up. Time is going to be after we beat this fight and the screen fades to black after the final cutscene skip. This fight definitely still can be a little scary depending on who it focuses. Which in this case happens to be my little blob friend. Turn should do it. Bleed's doing a lot of our damage here. Alright, and time will be coming up in just a second here, and time. Overall, that was pretty good. That one fight near the end was pretty sketchy, but we got there. That's basically what the estimate for is, almost that one fight entirely, so we got there. But yeah, that's Monster Sanctuary, everybody. Definitely check this game out if it looked interesting. If you like Metroidvanias, if you like, you know, Pokemon-esque monster collecting games, I think you'll definitely like this game a lot. This dev is actually releasing a new game later this year called Ethermancer. And in the tradition of this game, they're combining a monster collecting game with another genre. It's going to be a roguelike as well. They put a demo out for one of the Steam Next Fests not too long ago, and it was really, really promising so far, so definitely keep your eyes out for that as well if you're into roguelikes. But other than that, I think that's about it. Thanks everybody for watching. Definitely stick around for the rest of the weekend. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the runs on offer.
Good job.